right, this is David Wilcock. This is the Wisdom Teachings program here on Gaiam TV, a vast repository of metaphysical, spiritual, yoga, health, and fitness knowledge in the form of videos, many thousands of them, that you can access every month for $9.99. In addition, you can send me an email, and if we pick your question, we'll have you submit a video to us, and you will be in this show. We're doing 6 episodes to get started so that there's something for you to watch. And in these 6 episodes, I'm spelling out the living universe. The show is going to branch off from here into the questions about philosophy and practical tips that you can use to improve your life every day. This is a vast subject. One of the things that I really admire is the law of one material. It was allegedly derived from an intuitive source back in 1981, claiming to be millions, if not billions of years more evolved than we are. Many of the things that I'm sharing with you in these first 6 episodes, in fact most of them, were found in their core within this law of one material. But what they tell us is that we are fundamentally energetic beings originally, and that energy is not confined to the level of existence that we are right now. You are a master in training. You have a destiny that supersedes reincarnation. We can talk on and on about Dr. Ian Stevenson's research with over 3,000 children from all over the world, in which he went and followed up on their stories of having remembered being someone before. Some children insisted on being called a name that was not their name now. One girl from Lebanon remembered the names and interrelationships of 25 different people that she knew in her alleged past life. He wrote it all down. He found that family. They'd never spoken before. These 2 families had never come in contact. Every single thing the little girl remembered checked out. Do you want to keep reincarnating again and again? I believe that if you're watching these videos, you're focused on spiritual growth, transformation, personal healing, and self-improvement. If that's true, and you know about reincarnation, you know, in fact, that Christianity was teaching reincarnation, there was an oral tradition of secret knowledge from Jesus himself that was from Apostle Peter. Apostle Peter handed it to Clement of Augustine. Clement of Augustine handed it to a man named Origen. Origen wrote that one of Jesus' strongest teachings amongst his own disciples was reincarnation. But in 535 AD, the Catholic Church officially declared reincarnation anathema, which means you will be excommunicated. Now, excommunication back in those days means you're thrown out and you're going to die. You either believe in what they teach you or death will result. When we start to see how reincarnation was carefully manicured out of the Bible, we find out that the religions of the world are not so different. Nobody that did these teachings originally expected that they were going to bifurcate off into their own sect that people would argue, well, my God is better than your God. Originally, it was known to everyone, all the great enlightened masters, all the wisdom teachers, that we reincarnate. And now we have the scientific proof. There's even some quotes in the Bible that made it. There is a quote, I believe it's in the book of Mark, where the disciples asked Jesus, who has sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Now, Jesus should have said, wait a minute, what are you talking about? How could this man have sinned before he was born? And how could that sin be responsible for him being blind? Jesus said, no. It was only that the works of God would be made manifest in him, not that he was sinning before. But Jesus didn't say, whoa, 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 hold on. How could he have been sinning before he was born? So, look, there's an oral tradition. We know this. We know the Catholic Church took it out because they wanted an airtight cosmology that says you have one life to live. You're either going to hell or you're going to heaven. The only way you can go to heaven is pay tax, which back then was paying the church, which is called an indulgence or a tithe. So government has manicured what I call the subconscious Judeo-Christian bias from the Roman Empire that you probably might still be affected by. Many of the people in the Western world, even if they say, oh, I'm an atheist, I'm not Christian. Well, what they're doing is they're thinking based on that bias that has been taught to them over and over again. There's no reincarnation. But again, reincarnation was proven by Dr. Ian Stevenson, and what that suggests is that there is an energetic blueprint to who you are. Dr. Jim Tucker, who is a child and family psychiatrist, actually went back and looked at Dr. Ian Stevenson's reincarnation cases and found that people who claimed to have been someone else before, when the details checked out, guess what? Police forensic face matching software would actually match up their face to who they had been before, strongly enough that they could be accused and committed of a crime that they actually committed in their past life. It's that good. Now, how could that be possible? Dr. Jim Tucker, as a child psychiatrist, fully acknowledges the struggle that we have in science because it changes what we think we know. How could your facial features in your human body be energetically configured by what we could call the soul? It suggests that the DNA is not the whole answer. The DNA would only be what you inherit from your mother and father. How could your face carry over into the body that your mother and father gave you? This gets into energetic science. This gets into what I call the source field, the idea that the universe is made of a living consciousness, space, time, energy, matter, and biological life. You have an address in the source field. You have a name that will always be there. Your name will always remain in the universe. Your image, your awareness. You don't die. You just reincarnate from one life to another until you master the lessons of what you're here for. That's what Jesus' teaching was all about. And the Tibetans actually have 160,000 documented cases of people achieving rainbow body. It does say in the Bible that Jesus triumphed over Sheol. Sheol is the word that means the grave. You can conquer the cycle of reincarnation by learning that the universe has an agenda and figuring out what that agenda is. That's what this show is really about. The wisdom teachings are what you need to know to be on your ascension path to transcend reincarnation. Because if it's true that there is a universal blueprint, as I argue in the source field investigations, of what it means to be human, if that human code is written into DNA that's a wave throughout the universe, then what that also means is that what it means to be human could become the energy that makes the DNA. The DNA, the biological aspect of DNA, may not be the end of you. You may have an energetic signature that transcends the need for flesh once you as a soul reach a certain gradient of understanding and awareness. One of the most interesting things that shows us the potential of where this is going is, as I've said in the other 5 episodes before, the meditation effect. I want to review this one more time. 7,000 people get together, they meditate, and there is a 72% reduction in terrorism, fatalities, all these different types of variables of people suffering. There's also a corresponding increase in the economics. Everybody's happier, people get along, and 3 out of 4 people that would have committed a violent crime for some reason choose not to do it. They feel better, they feel happier because of you. We have the ability to influence the world in a positive way just by going within ourselves. That shows that the universe has an agenda. It's almost as if all of us have ascended a little bit. We're all getting a little bit closer to that state where we transcend materiality. All the great world teachers were telling us that you need to be more loving. Forgiveness of others, acceptance of others is the key. And again, everything I've been teaching you is leading up to where we can really have fun with this and talk about philosophy, talk about spiritual healing, talk about personal growth, because I don't want to keep this knowledge hidden. I want you, through this show, to have the knowledge that you need today to make your life happier, more successful, so that you are contributing to the solution by being in that blissful state so that you're one of those 7,000 people. Because you can live your daily life in a meditative state. Now, another thing that I talked about before is the fact that where we are in relationship to the center of the galaxy, this is sidereal time, that's the position of the Earth relative to the galactic center, has a 400% increase effect on your psychic ability. You will actually get so much more psychic when you come into alignment with the center of the galaxy, suggesting that that galactic center has some energetic influence on your life, that it raises your vibration in some way. Now that would require that consciousness and life is due to an energetic field which is attached to your DNA and moves through your DNA but is not limited to the biological form. That's a whole new way of looking at things. I also spoke in previous episodes, I'm tying it all together for you this time, about the DNA phantom effect. The DNA phantom effect is where, when DNA is put into a room, it exerts a gravitational field of some kind. That gravitational field absorbs every photon that would normally just ping around the room. The photons of light bend into the DNA molecule. And what's so fascinating is that when Garyaev removed the DNA, it was still held in place. All those photons continued spiraling where the DNA had been. This turns regular science completely upside down. We don't know what to do with this. It doesn't make sense. But what does make sense is the idea that that wave creates the DNA. You see, that's where this is going. The wave comes first, and then the DNA forms from that. But there is a phantom of the DNA that remains in the original location. So this is what the DNA looks like as it absorbs all the photons. There's not one dot here. No light has escaped the molecule. This is what the DNA phantom looks like. You've tilted it and zoomed in, and that's where we're seeing every photon is now captured inside the DNA molecule. The implications of this are incredible, because the implications are that what it means to be alive is written into the background of space itself. Your thoughts, your consciousness could be like satellite TV signals or radio signals beaming around. Now we want to get into some new stuff. Here is Dr. Luc Montagnier. This guy is a Nobel Prize-winning biologist, not a fluffy guy, not a guy working in his backyard, blogging on the internet, and hoping that he'll have fans on Facebook. This is a guy publishing mainstream scientific papers, getting himself out there, doing the hard work, and winning a Nobel Prize. Now tell that to the skeptics who say, oh, none of this stuff has any scientific proof. When you hear about what this guy discovered, the skeptics' response, we actually saw this in our discussion forum. Some skeptics were saying, David is having a dangerous idea. The dangerous idea that a Nobel Prize-winning scientist is actually credible. Sorry, but ripping bong hits in your mom's basement and writing hate on a YouTube video doesn't qualify you to vet out a Nobel Prize-winning scientist. Go back home. Don't bother us because we're trying to take this to the next step. What we can do here is see how this guy is able to look at you over the top of his glasses condescendingly. And when you see a scientist who's able to do that, you know he's on the right track. That's the archetype of the librarian, the study hall monitor, the principal at your school. You got to have chops to be able to do that right there. This guy knows what he's doing. Look at all the weird stuff that surrounds him on the shelves here. Test tubes. I mean, he's on it. Okay, now what did he do? Why does it matter? This is what the actual mainstream media published. The headline says, can our DNA electromagnetically teleport itself? One researcher thinks so. Now, I don't say teleportation is right. That's, they kind of got it wrong here. What we have to do is actually examine the nature of the experiment. What you're going to see in a minute here is that we've got a tube of water that has little pieces of DNA in it. It's hermetically sealed, capped off. We got other tubes that have water with no DNA at all. It's just pure water. Now, here he is at a conference. Here he is with 2 tubes of water. The experiment is literally that simple. There's no funny stuff. There's no monkey business. You just have 2 tubes of water. So let's take it from the top here. What was he doing? You got these 2 hermetically sealed tubes of water, right? That's what we start with. One of the tubes has little pieces of DNA in it. This experiment didn't work too well if there was too much DNA in the water. You could only have a little bit. Only then would you get the result. You then electrify both of these tubes with a 7 hertz electromagnetic field. That's the coil that you saw wrapped around the two tubes. Now, what's so interesting about 7 hertz? You might know, because that's Schumann resonance, right? 7.83 hertz is the basic heartbeat of the Earth. And that heartbeat determines, apparently, the base frequency that makes us able to live our lives and have health. Because when he pulsed that frequency through the water that had DNA in it, it activated the photons in the DNA. It released them. The electromagnetic energy shot those photons out. They travel through space. They travel into the other tube next door. And the other tube's molecules of water rearrange into DNA. This is a Nobel Prize-winning scientist finding water molecules, restructuring, and making DNA. This is astonishing stuff, because what it shows us is that DNA appears to be a quantum field effect that doesn't require other life forms to have existed there first. The DNA can be spontaneously, alchemically transformed out of ordinary, plain water. Are you getting how exciting this is? Are you getting that a Nobel Prize-winning scientist is showing us that life arranges spontaneously out of non-living material? What do you think that means about the nature of the universe? Could it be possible that life is all over the place? This experiment shows you the proof. This wave that caused these little guys of photons to shoot out of the DNA and trigger the water over here, all you got to do is hit the water with the photons. And he did this over and over again. You got to cook it for about 18 hours. It doesn't happen immediately, but 18 hours is all it takes. And then when you look at these guys under the microscope, they now have pieces of DNA floating in there. Well, that takes us to bacteria. Now, the prevailing viewpoint that you were taught in school, the conditioning that you've been given, if you will, the mind control, is that bacteria all must have started from one progenitor in what we call the primordial soup, right? In the beginning, there was the soup, and the soup was just a broth of nutrients that didn't have any real biological life, and then lightning strikes the soup, and they magically come together and they form little microbes, and then from that one moment of creation, in the atheist viewpoint, all of life on Earth was built. One explosion. I don't know. There's some problems with that, and here's the problem. Bacteria can be found in the ice in the Antarctic. Bacteria have been found inside volcanoes that actually eat lava. Bacteria have been found inside hermetically sealed nuclear reactors. Nothing is supposed to be able to get in, and these little critters appear on the wall, and they're eating radiation. How the heck did they get in there? They survive in space. Now, I'm telling you that if you look at the water experiment that we just had, we see that they're appearing out of non-living material. So, for example, in the volcano, the elements in the lava actually transform into microbes, even at that high temperature. The same thing with a nuclear reactor. They're taking the radiation, and the radiation, because it's made of living stuff, everything in the universe is alive. Energy, matter, it's alive. The photons have to be right. That's the law of one model. This material that was allegedly channeled in 1981 said that there are second density photons, which mean that they have the codes for all life, which is everything on Earth that's alive is second density except humans, which are third density. First density is earth, air, fire, and water. Second density photons, the law of one model says, beam in and transfigure first density material, like the water molecules, into life forms. And that's now been verified by a Nobel Prize-winning scientist. How the heck did they know that in 1981? I lived with Carla Ruckert, who spoke these words for 2 years. There's no way that she faked this material. And there's hundreds of points like this in the law of one that can be validated scientifically. So bacteria have been recovered from the ice in the Antarctic. They've been revived after 10 million years of being frozen. That's because the code is there, and then the life wave reanimates the bacteria. We see that there are bacteria that photosynthesize light out of the darkness. We see that they can thrive on infrared, which is heat. And they've been found miles beneath the ocean floor. Everywhere on Earth that we have ever looked, we find life. How could it all possibly have come from one single bacterium that was formed when lightning struck on one place on Earth? It doesn't make sense. You have to open your mind here. And it gets even farther than that. One of the two guys who actually discovered DNA, Dr. Francis Crick, figured out that it's impossible for DNA to evolve randomly. Now, this is not just any old guy. He's one of the two people who discovered the DNA. He knows what he's talking about. Now, here's what he found. DNA is so complicated that it could not evolve randomly. The likelihood would be akin to cutting up the Encyclopedia Britannica into individual words, dropping them one at a time like confetti out of a helicopter, and having all the words arranged when they hit the ground into the encyclopedia in its proper sequence. That's how ridiculous it is. It is so astronomical that the whole idea of monkeys on typewriters and one of them is going to type Shakespeare, it even puts that to shame. That probability is good compared to the likelihood that DNA could have ever evolved by a Darwinian random process. It's not there. That's an intelligent cosmos. That's a living universe that has the laws of life written into quantum physics. Biology is made from the wave. That's where it starts. Now, we also have Dr. Fred Hoyle and Dr. Chandra Wickrama Singh, who looked at the dust in the galaxy. And they found that the dust had a very strange optical quality. The only way that they could duplicate that in the lab was by presuming that all the dust in the galaxy was hard on the outside and hollow on the inside, specifically 70% hollow on the inside. That's weird. 70% hollow on the inside? What could do that? They spent years trying to figure out what could possibly be causing all these particles of dust in the galaxy to be 70% hollow on the inside. One day, they figured it out. If you take bacteria and you freeze dry them, the outside becomes hard and then the whole inside goes hollow, 70% hollow, exactly the same. And this was only one of several optical qualities of galactic dust that are precisely matched by freeze-dried microbes. Now, how much of the galactic dust is like this? Believe it or not, it's 99.9% of all the dust in the galaxy. That means that 0.01% doesn't look like dust. Where is all this dust coming from? Think about it for a minute. The solar wind. The sun is giving off particles which then hit our Earth's atmosphere and actually, in some cases, cause problems. If a lot of particles come in, then we get radio interference. Now we're finding out that the solar wind, the actual stuff that's coming off the surface of the sun, is microbes. That means that when you look at the surface of the sun, you're looking at a boiling, living factory, a factory that makes life. Then you can say, well, okay, maybe that's the purpose of the sun, is just to make microbes. But there's microbes on your skin, aren't there? Do the microbes on your skin represent who you are? No. So maybe the microbes coming off of these stars all throughout our galaxy are only one of the lower forms of life that those stars represent. Maybe those stars have all the codes for all forms of life. Well, that would totally explain what we see with the Budakovsky experiment that I spoke of in one of the previous episodes, 2 of them actually, in which you beam in a hologram of a healthy raspberry plant into this callus, this tumor, and it generates healthy raspberries. How the heck is that possible? The holographic light carries the code of the DNA molecule, which rearranges the cancer cells and turns them into healthy cells. We also spoke about Burlakov's fish egg experiment, in which older eggs like this were put next to younger eggs, and they absorbed the health out of the younger eggs. I also told you that when he put a glass slide in the way, that gravitational effect that pulls these photons of health out of those younger eggs was blocked. That glass, what's the optical property of glass that makes that happen? Do you know? Glass blocks ultraviolet. Quartz does not. If you put a quartz slide in the way, the weaker eggs still die off. But if you put glass in the way, they're protected. The glass is stopping them from losing those ultraviolet photons that are stored in their DNA. That's the essence of health. Now, I want to take it a step further. This is Dr. Glenn Ryan. And no, that's not a mugshot. It's one of the only pictures of him I could find on the internet. This is back when his hair was still black. He's got a more sandy gray color now. But Dr. Glenn Ryan has discovered one of the most significant things in the history of science. He takes undifferentiated human cells from a placenta, sticks them in a test tube, and then hands them to someone who can create really powerful feelings of love, or in other cases, really powerful feelings of anger. When someone sent anger into cells from a placenta, the cells actually die. And he could measure this by their absorption of 260 nanometer ultraviolet light. The amount of that light can be precisely measured, and when you send anger towards those cells, we know that you're killing them. This is microbiological proof that anger kills cells from someone else's body, not your body, somebody else. So he caught this mechanism in process on the quantum level. But when you feel love, you can actually heal someone else's DNA. You're able to restructure it. So you see what this means? You have the power to create DNA structuring waves. That's one of our big wisdom teachings. You are not immune from the healing power of the universe. You can direct it to yourself, you can direct it to other people, and I've now showed you how that works. This is direct DNA evidence supporting the Berlikov fish egg study. It demonstrates that we can transfer vital energy to each other. If you want someone to be healed, you can heal them. And when people get angry, when someone tries to come after you, they want to break you down, as you feel fear, anger, depression, sadness, if you feel like you have to apologize profusely and this person who's so angry refuses to accept an apology and they keep coming after you even after you say you're sorry, you can withdraw. You don't have to take that anger in because they can actually suck the health right out of you. You can be killed off. You can actually get sick from somebody else. And now here's the trick. They feed off of your energy. If you get angry at somebody else, you actually feel more energized. You actually feel more health. Some people have closed down the love in their lives. The love is what opens up that DNA to the photons streaming in from the source field. Because there's virtual photons in the source field. You can take an empty vacuum that has no light and look on the quantum level and little photons appear. When you feel love, you're opening up that DNA phantom. You're opening up that wave so photons can absorb into your DNA. And again, you have so much DNA in your body, we're talking about quadrillions of photons here. So here's the thing. This may be a genetic holdover from the animal kingdom for a very good reason. The survival of the fittest, the more aggressive species succeeds, and specifically the alpha male who's out there at the front of the cave fighting off the saber-toothed tiger. Everybody else is cowered in fear, worried about what's going to happen, and they're sending photons to him which make him stronger. And he's feeding on that energy. This is what the negative elite in the world are actually doing. This is also why basketball teams or baseball teams or whatever are more likely to win at the home game. So it's a holdover from the animal kingdom. This is what I believe is the root of the negative power elite on Earth. What they're trying to do, they're absorbing your energy. They want to create fake catastrophes, put you in fear, terrorize the people, and then be seen as the liberators and the leaders. They put their faces on the coins. Every time you see their face and you're in fear and you're worried about the country, you're sending them energy. Every time you see them on TV or see them in the newspaper or see them on the cover of a magazine or on the internet, you're sending photons to them. These tunnels are not restricted by distance. So what you can do today is to help break that cycle. Remember, the meditation effect shows terrorism, war, fatalities, 72% can be reduced. Because when you feel loving energy, when you breathe in that meditative state, Do it with me right now. You are healing yourself. You're healing the world. You are pumping the photons back into your DNA. You're healing other people's DNA. You're closing up the wounds that will allow their energy to be stolen from them. And when enough of us do this, we break the cycle of war, atrocities, and fear and pain. That's today's wisdom teaching. I'm David Wilcock. This is Gaiam TV. Thank you for watching. Gaiam TV, David Wilcock. This is Wisdom Teachings. I am so glad to be back with you right now. Today's episode is absolutely mind-blowing because what we're going to be talking about is really kind of like the ultimate ancient astronaut / conspiracy theory. This knowledge that I'm about to impart to you is utterly revolutionary because if the skeptics were to accept what's right in front of their face, we would have a complete elimination of the problem of people not being willing to believe in extraterrestrial intelligence, in higher spiritual concepts, and in the idea that the human being could evolve to some higher form of what it means to be human. So I've set up some groundwork. We've done 6 episodes so far. And in those 6 episodes, I explained to you that DNA functions as a quantum wave, that it's written into the background of space and time. And this is not supposition. This is scientific information. When we take that knowledge and apply it into the lab